Board of County Commissioners. Today we're going to talk first about the County Manager Performance Evaluation process. And I want to recognize Ed Gagnon of Customer Service Solutions, Inc. and Julie Broom, Human Resources Director, for this item. First, we'll say when the Board of Commissioners hired the County Manager, there was a desire to conduct a mid-year evaluation to provide feedback to the manager regarding his performance and then conduct a formal evaluation in 12 months. The Board, through Human Resources, engaged Ed Gagnon to work with the board members and key management staff to update the performance expectations and criteria for the County Manager's performance evaluation to facilitate this process. Ed is here to present the summary of his work.
Thank you all very much for letting me come and spend some time with you today. And the document that was passed out in front of you is basically what we're going to be walking through together today. I have a PowerPoint, but essentially the PowerPoint is just conveying what's on your handout as well. So in terms of what we're going to be talking about today, there's a few different items. First of all, we're going to review a draft of 8 different competencies for the county manager and get your input if you want to make any revisions, changes as well. These are based on interviews with you all. If you all remember when I interviewed you all in preparation, not only for the public schools budgeting collaborative meeting with the Board of Education, we also had a portion that was talking about evaluation criteria and your expectations of the county manager. There are also 7 different county staff that were part of interviews. So we took all this information from these 12 interviews. We looked at, to some extent, the current criteria, competencies that are used for the county manager, and then we categorized all this information and are presenting what's in front of you now. Please feel free to offer clarification or ask for clarification on any of these items. If there's revisions you'd like to make, that would be great. And then we'll talk about next steps, including hopefully getting some consensus and approval on this document. So what you're looking at in front of you are 8 different potential competencies that you all could utilize to evaluate the county manager. We reviewed a draft of these, or I did with Julie and Mark as well. They perused it, and we didn't make any changes to content. We did group a couple of the competencies together, but all the content that came out of those 12 interviews is still there. So before we hop into the 8 competencies and review them individually, any questions about what we're about to walk through here today? Okay, I know we have about an hour. There's 8 of these, so we'll spend maybe roughly about 5 minutes on each of these. So this is the first competency. It's called openness, integrity, and accountability. And a good way to look at this competency is to look at it from the perspective of what are those personality traits or those individual traits you all are looking for in a county manager. The first bullet point addresses, to a large extent, who that individual is, what makes him or her, what are those qualities you're looking for. And then second is, to some extent, how do they do business? So this particular competency reads, operates in a fair and ethical manner, treats people with respect and with consistency, and can be trusted to do what they said they would. So that builds trust into that expectation, honors their commitments, again building trust, and gives fair consideration in dealing with others, is non-judgmental, bringing humility and openness into situations in order to do what is fundamentally right. So a lot of ethics and trust orientation in terms of the kind of qualities that you all expected the staff were looking for as well in the county manager position. In terms of how they operate, is an effective communicator with an emphasis on listening to others to gather broad-based views, as well as encouraging suggestions and ideas. So a lot of what came out of the interviews were, we want to make sure this person is listening to others, even if they might typically have a contrary position or opinion of theirs, prior to formulating opinions, making sure that that listening characteristic is there, is a genuine person, sincerely and positively being concerned with understanding others prior to making decisions, is transparent and forthright in communications with others, building trust, again, by holding oneself to the same standard expected of others. So this is a little theme that we're going to see in a couple of these competencies where this individual is the model for what they expect of others. So I'll kind of pause there in this first competency. Again, a lot of this is about personal qualities and to some extent how they operate, ethics, openness, integrity, being a model. Any questions on that or any modifications y'all might want to see? Mr. Akmus, does that sound like the kind of qualities that you're looking for out of the county manager position? Okay. Mr. Ray?
Yes.
Okay. Mr.
I think this would apply to any manager we have.
Oh, okay. And that's a very interesting statement because Mr. Watson had said, these are the kind of qualities, if this is what's expected of me, this is what I look for in my folks as well. That general theme came out of our conversations. Mr. Rushing or Simpson, any comments before we move on to the next one? Okay. The next two deal to a large extent with you all, with board relations in particular. This first competency, again, is broken up into two different pieces. The first one emphasizes communication with the board. The second is more how the county manager operates in working with you all. It says maintains professional and positive relationships with all board members. That word all was emphasized in working and interviewing you all. Effectively keeps all board members informed of activities and issues on a timely basis, and that timeliness is going to be a common thread throughout. Provides information and guidance where needed in advance of discussions and votes. And when we say in advance, there was the emphasis on it. Advance doesn't mean giving us information to digest right before the meeting. It means give it to us a day before. If we have a Monday meeting and there's information pertinent to the discussion, give it to us on Friday. I mean, give us some time to review and absorb the information being provided. In terms of how the county manager would operate in working with you all, anticipates and confirms board needs and priorities, facilitates education of the board on key topics of interest, similar to what we did in our fall budget meeting where we identified those topics of interest to you all and then formulating a plan to give you the information you need for the budget process. And enables the board to engage in processes that would allow them to define direction, determine priorities, and make decisions. And this is very important because it talks about the manager's role not necessarily in defining your direction, determining your priorities, and making your decisions, but they create a process where you all can define your priorities, where you all can determine the direction and make decisions. So they kind of set up the framework and the environment for you all to be successful going through that process. Thoughts or comments on this slide? Mr. Ray? Mr. Helms? Mr. Simpson, in terms of how you want the manager to relate to you and generally operate with you all, how does that sound? Good. All right. Mr. Rushing, was that fairly representative of what y'all are looking for? Mr. Akins? Okay, great. The next one obviously deals with the board. It's carrying out your policy. It says implements the policies of the board, supporting key messages and decisions made by the board, communicates effectively with leadership and staff about the board initiatives, and clearly articulates the rationale behind the decisions. So obviously part of this and the focus and the need for this came from the conversations with you all, but there was also a good part of it that came from the conversations with the staff, that the staff wants to make sure that they are clear on your directives, on your initiatives, on your priorities, and the rationale behind it so they can effectively not only do that, but communicate that to their staff. So some of this came from the managers that we interviewed as well, saying make sure we're very much in the know about your thinking behind the decisions you're making so that they can carry it out and communicate it effectively as well. So any thoughts or comments on this competency? Mr. Rushing, anything pop to mind? Okay. Any others? Mr. Ray?
I have one. I know the short time I've been on this board, I have become mindful of the fact that I'm just one of 5 members on this board, and I have a desire, we may not always agree, but to keep everybody up to speed on what's going on. And I can't imagine it getting started any better than it has. And the only thing I'm thinking, it seems like everything's good. You got to have bad times to know what you need to work on. We've been in a little row of good things, and so, and I'm sure the test will come, but it's been a learning experience for me, and it makes me a better person being around these other 4 gentlemen and all our county staff. So
I'm sure me and Jack, if I come up with some bad time videos in years past, bloopers.
So I appreciate you saying that. And what's interesting is, in some of the competencies we'll look at, we'll talk about issues do arise. So when they arise, what is that problem-solving approach, and what do you expect out of the county manager for when those things do crop up? So,
well, it goes back to that no news is usually good news.
Any other comments on this competency, this expectation before we move on? Okay. Now what we're getting into is engaging different stakeholder groups. We're going to start with the community at large. And, this particular competency is broken up into two different sections as well. We have general engagement with the population, and then we're going to talk about different partner organizations in particular and what you all would expect out of the county manager as far as that goes. So it starts with the county manager is visible, accessible, and approachable in the community with residents and with partner organizations. We'll define partner organizations in the next paragraph. Represents Union County government in a positive manner and engenders respect and trust of the organization and the community, seeks community input and priorities, and then shares that input with staff, with board members whenever appropriate, and utilizes that input to inform decisions and communications. So there's a lot in there, but a lot of this just gets to the county manager is out there, he's accessible, he's not just reacting when he gets feedback, but he or she, the county manager, is actually soliciting feedback. What do you think? What's working? What do we need to improve? What do you think are the priorities? So there is that ongoing engagement with the community to make sure that we're reflecting positively on Union County government when the county manager's out there, but there's also that give and take with the community in general. Any comments on that before we transition to some of the partner organizations, Mr.
The
Hamlin?
only thing I would add is engaged.
Okay.
I mean, you know, we're accessible, approachable, yeah, but you need to be engaged as well.
Okay, good. So with community engagement, literally talk about the fact that we're not just there, but we're actually engaging or engaged with the community. Okay. Any other comments or thoughts?
Well, I think one thing I want Mark to do is engage all of our municipalities and the boards and the mayors, because each one is a different entity. And it's hard sometimes to understand what each elected board wants. We've seen a little bit of council members coming to our board and speaking out, and I think that we should be sitting down and talking instead of them showing up in public comment and trying to influence public direction.
And just to address that, I'll go through the second bullet and see if that kind of encapsulates what you're looking for. It says, in addition to working well with local partner organizations, such as educational organizations, and what was mentioned in the interviews, Wingate, SBCC, Union County Public Schools, etc., economic development and business-related organizations and other agencies serving the local community also fosters positive working relationships with other municipalities. So there's a lot of discussion about the towns, regional partnerships, and state governmental agencies. So the idea is that you all expect the county manager to not only be engaging the residents, to be out there and engaged in the community, but to be very intentional about going to the towns, going to the regional partnerships, for example, other entities as well, and making sure that we're proactively fostering positive relationships. Does that address what you're looking for? Okay. Other thoughts or comments on that competency? Okay. Mr. Simpson, is that good from your perspective?
Yeah, that's good.
Thank you. The next item really deals with decision making and problem solving, which we alluded to earlier, and to some extent is starting to get us focused a little bit within the organization itself. There's two different components to this competency as well. One is the decisions they make in general and the approach to that, and the second is dealing with issues in particular, to the point that we talked about a minute ago. So you all expect the county manager to seek the input and opinions of key stakeholder groups at multiple levels of the organization during decision-making processes, and obtains the support of the management team on those decisions. So one of the themes that was coming out of a lot of the interviews we had was, let's not just have the manager operate in a silo or with the top 2 or 3 individuals and seeking their input. Where it's important to get the input of the division directors or even the frontline staff at times, make sure that we're going where we need to go to make sure we have a good 360-degree view of that particular situation to make the right decision, and make sure that the management team as well is in support of whatever that particular decision is. So that's more general decision-making approach. Again, listening to other voices where needed, making sure we're not restricting ourselves to 2, 3, 4 people, to seek input. The second deals more so with issue resolution. Keep lines of communication with management and staff open, and becomes aware of issues and potential concerns quickly. So the idea is if there is a natural inclination on the part of the county manager to engage staff, to engage the division directors, to have that kind of dialogue and rapport listed, find those touch points with those folks. When issues arise, there's less of a concern from staff to come to the county manager, identifying the issue, identifying the potential solution. So keep the lines of communication open, and hopefully that'll lead to identifying issues, finding out about issues more quickly. Works to reduce the likelihood that problems arise, and when issues are identified, they're resolved quickly. When the issues arise that can impact the board or key constituents, they're quickly brought to your attention. So again, it's speed of awareness. So hopefully we don't have that many issues, but we become aware more quickly, they're addressed more quickly, and if anything could possibly impact you or your key constituents, they're brought to you quickly, even if it's a matter of sharing, hey, this is what's going on, this is what we're doing to work on it, just erring on the side of being quick to communicate with you all rather than holding back information for a period of time until resolution. So again, decision-making, problem-solving, thoughts or comments on this competency?
I think I would take key stakeholders out because it insinuates that maybe there's your primary focus when you need to talk to all your stakeholders. I mean, your frontline employees can provide an awful lot of valuable information for our management team overall to be effective.
Okay. All right. So if they're stakeholders, they're stakeholders. Don't let that keyword restrict who you might go to. Okay. Other thoughts on this particular competency, how, in general, how they go about making decisions, who they communicate with, and then for the county manager, what that approach is to issue resolution. Other thoughts? Mr. Rushing, any thoughts on that particular competency? Mr. Akins? All right. Does that sound good? Mr. Simpson, Mr. Wright? Okay. Great. So in terms of the next competency, this is, what we're getting into here is a little bit of organizational knowledge. It's titled Financial Planning and Budget Responsibility, but obviously that relates to all the different departments and agencies that are managed in this organization. So it starts with, has a broad understanding of organizational functions and services provided, has a working knowledge of the budget and other finance, governance, legal, legislative matters, understands the budget process, and is adequately able to present it to you all and manage that process and working with the board. So this was kind of one of those interesting questions we asked when we talked to you all, talked to the staff. What does the county manager need to have that specific knowledge, that specific expertise of? And what the general theme for most of the individuals that I interviewed was, let's not necessarily say they have to be an expert in one particular department or one particular agency. That's why you have the leadership structure within the organization. But that county manager needs to have that broad understanding of what are the functions, the services, the programs we provide, how are they structured, how do they operate. But in particular, in serving you all as a board, a large part of what your responsibility is at the policy level is to establish the budget, to ensure that we're addressing both the operational and capital needs. So they might have to have more of a detailed understanding, a workable understanding of the finance, some of the governance, legal, legislative type issues that might impact your policy making. So that's why those were called out a little bit. Any comments or questions on this particular competency? Mr. Helms, anything? Mr. Akins, does this reflect what y'all would expect out of the county manager? Okay. Mr. Simpson? Mr. Rape or Mr. Rushing, anything y'all would want to add to that or edit on that? Okay. In terms of the next competency, this is to a large extent dealing with management of staff and operations and development of the staff and the leadership team. You all provided some comments that played into it. Actually, a lot of the comments that we utilized to develop this competency came out of the meetings with those staff interviews as well, that particular content. The first talked about developing and engaging the team, and the other talks about the environment that the county manager could create for the organization to be successful. So this competency starts with the county manager provides clear expectations of management and staff, is the model, again, that's a word that I used earlier on, is the model to personnel of the attitudes and actions that the manager expects of others, is knowledgeable enough, and this goes back to the prior slide, about any area to appropriately support provide direction, and make informed decisions. Develops personnel and taps into their expertise so that performance and decision-making are as effective as possible. So a lot of this is starting to get tied together, where we talked about the need for this manager to make sure that they are communicating with the staff and the managers on an ongoing basis, that they rely on the expertise of those managers when they're making decisions. They don't have to be the expert in any particular agency or department per se. Decision making is vitally important, but it needs to be informed decision making. So making sure that we are developing staff, engaging staff, whether that be at the highest level of management, the division director staff as well, so that they are building their expertise and we're tapping into it to make decisions. In terms of the environment that the county manager would create, it says the county manager creates an environment where staff can be successful, again, clearly communicating direction and focus, and empowering people to effectively do their jobs. And then we're going to get into positive recognition and employee development from that perspective. Recognizes those for high performance, effective work, skills, commitment, and redirects staff where that improvement is needed, where we need to reinforce expectations so that staff can work effectively as a team. So to some extent, it's let's create an environment where we're constantly growing in our skill set. People are becoming more knowledgeable, more comfortable in dialoguing with each other, working as a team and making decisions. And then recognizing those when those decisions lead to high performance or effective work or timeliness, but also realizing not everything's going to be perfect. And there's going to be times when staff, for whatever reason, are not performing at the level expected of them, that level that was clearly articulated up front. And when that's the case, we need to make sure that we are not letting those performance issues just go on and on. We're redirecting staff. We're trying to help those staff as much as possible, reinforcing those expectations as well. So this gets into a little bit of the style of management in terms of the environment we create, recognizing those where we're doing great. There's an accountability piece as well that ties into our first competency. So I'll pause there. Thoughts or comments on this particular competency? Okay. Mr. Ray, anything pop to mind?
We're kind of still in the honeymoon stage right now.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
You say the honeymoon stage?
Honeymoon stage.
Yeah. So,
Hopefully
yes,
this is not just for Mark, but it's kind of a standard for managers to come.
mm-hmm. Yes. And, so that's the expectation Mark shared, that this is, if this is something that you all adopt as your expectation of him, these are good guiding principles as well for the management of the organization. Any other comments on that competency? Okay. As we start to weave toward the end, this is actually the last competency, and it's long because it's a grouping of two different competencies we had previously, but it's the general way that this individual operates and the general philosophy that the county manager would have. It's called strategic leadership and facilitative management, and there's three different components. One is the manager, the leader, helps to set the vision for the organization. That leader, that manager facilitates the movement of the organization toward that mission, that vision, excuse me. And then oftentimes, obviously, with an organization as large as this, you have a lot of moving pieces, a lot of projects, a lot of activities going on. So the county manager is organized enough, coordinated enough in getting all these different pieces to work together as they move toward whatever that end vision is. So starting with the vision piece, the county manager identifies a positive organizational vision for supporting a growing community. So it's not just creates the vision, but understands that the community is growing. What is that vision, and how is that vision going to handle and facilitate that growth? Clearly notes how the manager's role and staff's role align to a greater purpose in the community at large. Makes decisions, takes action to keep the organization focused on moving toward that vision, supports staff when they are suggesting actions to leadership of the board that support the board priorities, support your priorities, and or would move the organization toward the vision. So this is a lot of vision oriented, where it's clearly articulated and we're trying to make decisions in somewhat of a litmus test is saying, will this decision on the part of a department or agency or manager will it help us to achieve the vision? And if so, the manager is going to support that decision. I'll kind of pause there since this is kind of a large competency, see if there's any questions or comments on it. Mr. Akmus, sound positive? Now, there's a lot of words on this one, so I'll kind of go at it piece by piece. The second particular competency, and again, this particular one was driven a lot by the staff interviews, but the second portion of this competency talks about the county manager serving as a facilitator of actions taken by others that would move the organization towards its goals, its vision. So when you think about a facilitator in a leadership position, oftentimes the leader has defined the vision, and then the staff are working through the operations, the plans to get there. And sometimes there's that obstacle, that roadblock, and it needs to be addressed so that the people can keep working there. So making sure that that can take place, that movement toward the vision, is able to identify key individuals and teams that need to be involved, and creates an environment for them to work successfully together toward a collective goal. So you might have 2 different departments or 3 different departments or some agency and departments or different individuals who don't normally work together, being able to create an environment where even though we might assume that they're siloed because of their individual division responsibilities, if they're working on a team together on a project, they're not siloed because the manager can identify this is our team goal, our collective goal, and get them working toward that goal. So serving that facilitator role. Any questions or comments on that? Mr. Rushing, you see that facilitator role? Okay. Mr. Simpson, any thoughts? Good. All right. And the last bullet point is effective at organizing and coordinating projects. Again, so many projects go on at once, even above and beyond the normal day-to-day operations of the county government. So can organize, coordinate them and the initiatives in such a way as to understand their timing and execution, how they relate to each other. You can almost think about a work plan, several work plans with milestone dates working concurrently. Proactively engage the staff to create openness and a dialogue orientation so that staff can be connected to each other when working on projects, initiatives, and the greater goals of the organization. So that particular competency gets at, we want to create an environment where, again, we're not working in silos, but there is that ongoing collaborative environment that's created. So when these opportunities arise, groups can work together. So in this last competency, changes, suggestions or perspectives on it that y'all would like to share? You know, we started out by talking about the personal qualities of a county manager, and then we talked about their interaction with you all and carrying out your policy, and then we talked to some extent about the knowledge they have to have, what you expect of them in terms of engagement in the community and engaging staff. Literally, the idea is if the county manager conducts him or herself in such a way that they accomplish these competencies, that is what you would expect out of an effective individual in that role. Is that an accurate statement to make? If they accomplish these 8 competencies, that's in general what you're looking for out of a county manager of Union County government. Okay. Mr. Simpson, Mr. Rushing. Okay. Next steps that we have on the last slide. My understanding is that there would need to be and I can ask the question, but there would need to be some mode of formal approval or vote on these competencies, taking into account the edits that we're talking about here. Is that the desire of the group and of Mark as well, to have formal approval of these competencies?
I think it would be best if you'll, if you agree on these, to formally adopt them so they can go into the process.
I think we first need to make sure everybody approves the additions and or deletions that we have there.
Yes, the community engagement comment was really focused on when we're in the community, making sure that we are not just, let's see if I can go back to that, not just being engaged, being in the community visible, but something to the extent that says is visible, accessible, engaged, and approachable, or engages and represents Union County government. So somewhere we talked about that proactive engagement of the community in one of those first 2 sentences. And then the next point was when we were talking about decision making and the problem solving, just to take out the word key here, so it's not a limiting factor to the manager to figure out who to engage.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So in terms of needing the vote, is that, Mr. Helms, would you like me to state that? Or
Why don't you restate it, and then I'll
Okay.
make a motion that we
Okay. So my understanding is that the Union County Board of Commissioners would approve these 8 competencies for the evaluation of the county manager with the assumption that these 2 modifications will be made and utilize that moving forward.
Okay, I'll make a motion to accept 8 competencies as presented and modified. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Okay. In terms of other next steps, I just want to hit on a couple quick items here, and I might ask Julie to hop in as well. We'll work with HR to incorporate the changes that you all just approved. And Julie, do you want to talk a little bit about the process of finalizing the evaluation form, as well as possibly looking at a June timeframe for doing the first mid-year evaluation of the county manager?
So we will put this information in an evaluation form that you're familiar with, that you've used for prior county managers, and use that in the process. You had asked for a 6-month kind of check back to the manager to give some feedback, so I'll be approaching you around June to have that conversation and feedback, and that will be informal. And then we'll go with the annual evaluation after 12 months.
Any comments or questions on that?
Can we, ongoing, can we facilitate some kind of informal 6-month anyway? I mean, because last thing any employee needs is come up at their annual evaluation and find out, I had no clue that's where I was. So can we also incorporate some kind of informal, to make sure that, that there's no surprises? You can't fix what you don't know you got wrong.
If that's the desire of the board, yes, then we can install a 6-month going forward.
Do we need to vote on that? Okay. I'll make a motion that we modify to have a 6-month intervening update on performance and expectations. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay.
All right. Thank y'all very much for your time. Appreciate that.
Thank you. All right, next we'll, thank you, Ed, I appreciate it. It's always good to have your leadership and everything. Next, we're going to talk about our fire funding study update, and I'll recognize Michael James, Assistant County Manager, for his presentation. Michael. Thank you.
Right. Good afternoon, Chairman and Commissioners. I'm glad to be back to talk about our favorite subject, fire funding. The past few months, we've been working with our municipalities and giving presentations to the board. The board had asked that we go and talk about what was the purpose of our fire funding study, what's currently before the board as far as potential options, what we're trying to achieve, all those things. So we went and did that. So we're coming back to the board with that feedback, and I hope we'll get some further direction and provide a staff recommendation today on how we'd like to move forward. So again, our objective, we'll talk about the feedback from our municipalities, give a little overview of what those presentations look like and what was included. We'll provide the staff recommendation, have some discussion around that and why our recommendation is what it is. And at the end, ask for some board direction on next steps. So the board has seen this slide before, but just as a reminder of what the objective of our fire funding study was. This is the scope that we use to contract with Stantec, who began working with us in January 2018, with the ultimate goal being that we create some maximum equity and cost burden and provide a sustainable long-term funding strategy for how we fund fire protection in Union County. The stakeholder involvement, as you guys know, we've been before the Board of Commissioners probably 4 or 5 times so far throughout the process to get feedback on options, to gain some additional direction. We did the same thing with the fire chiefs, where we were with that group 2 or 3 times and had similar conversations. We've had a lot of informal conversations with fire chiefs, with municipal leaders, some town managers, mayors, outside of our presentations, and those went really well with keeping that communication open, talking about what the options are, and getting some additional feedback throughout the process. So direction to date, as you'll recall, we know when we got started, we wanted to address that fire fee model and determine what options we have for replacement. And working with tax, we wanted to make sure that we assessed appropriately parcels in the county. We wanted to make sure that we addressed the issues of having fewer volunteers in our system, the cost of fire continuing to go, density in our county changing, that our methodology that the board chooses kind of meets and can address those changes. We did remove the 6th district option at our most recent meeting before the board. We took that off the table, and again, we met with the municipalities to have those conversations. So ultimately, what we've done, we knew that there was a lot of confusion among a lot of people about how we fund fire in the county. A big part of our conversations with the towns was to talk about, you know, how does the fire fee system work? How did it come to Union County? Kind of walk them through that. How does the fire tax methodology work? You know, who sets tax rates? How's the money spent? How are budgets submitted? We kind of went through that briefly with some of the towns and tried to answer some questions that they had. So we provided them a snapshot, which you guys will see in the presentation and have seen before, of the budget snapshot of what the revenues are, where they come from, and what the expenses are, where they go to. How is the countywide fire tax shared among fire departments? All those kinds of questions we walked through to give them a better sense of how fire protection is funded in Union County. Additionally, we talked about the fire tax rate estimates that the board has seen. We showed that to them so they could see, depending on which district that they're in, what their residents will be paying in their town. So we walked through those. We talked about sales tax. One of the questions that one of the managers had a while back was, would our sales tax revenue be affected by the creation of additional fire tax districts in the county? We explained that it would not be affected, that the sales tax revenue that the fire departments get come from the county's allotment of sales tax. So we walked through those things. Had some general question and answer. Some boards spoke more than others, but I thought we answered a lot of questions that were out there in the community. I thought it was worth time well spent, worthwhile for us to do that and to build some goodwill out in the community about what we're trying to do. So I want to provide a definition sheet. I'm sure the board's more aware or very aware of what those methodologies are. But just for reference, I wanted to provide the general definition of what the models, what the methodologies are that we're talking about. And again, the board has seen this just for reference. We want to refer back to this later on in the conversation, but here's the budget snapshot that we've seen with revenues and expenditures. So here's how it kind of broke down after our conversations. All the towns, most of the towns chose some option of fire tax. And so self-funding tax district, it was Fairview, Lake Park, Marvin, Stallings, Wesley Chapel, and Henry Bridge as their preferred preference. As you guys saw in the attachment, a lot of the towns said that was their preference, but they also could understand how the 80-20 model or some percentage of county subsidy would make sense as well. So they provided that feedback. For the self-funding plus county subsidy, you see Marshall, Unionville, Waxhaw, Mineral Springs. I listed that as their favorite or their preferred option. Indian Trail was the only one that kind of said they want to hold things as it is right now. I think the conversation got a little wrapped up into their more regional conversation that's been going on in that part of the county. But we had a lot of conversations with their town manager, again, did a presentation to their town council. I think they understand why we're focused on this and spending energy, but at this point in time, they did feel comfortable giving a recommendation on their preference. So some of the key takeaways, I think a good thing about these conversations were that a lot of the councils and staff kind of understood globally how our system works in the county. And when we talk about an 80-20 model, why that could potentially make sense as a methodology, talking about mutual aid between the fire departments and how they work together very closely in the county to make sure that all of our residents are protected. Again, no municipalities preferred a fire fee district, and there was, the fire chiefs did a great job working with their mayors, their council members. You could tell that the municipalities rely heavily on their fire chiefs for a lot of their information, work very closely with them, and have a great relationship with them. So that's something we definitely found out through this process.
Michael, can you
Yes,
go
sir.
back to that, please, sir?
Yes, sir.
Town of Indian Trail, Stallings Fire Department, they're a fire tax district.
Mhm.
That's kind of self-funded tax district. Why is that separated?
Status quo because the Bakers is in Indian Trail. So
Okay.
they didn't vote to even change Bakers to a tax district. But all the ones would be the same except Bakers, which is a fee district. That's what kind of throws it. Again, the commissioners, you have seen this slide before. That's just the feedback from the fire chiefs, just to remind you all about that group of stakeholders, what their preference was. Again, the board has seen this slide before when we talked about before thinking about a decision. Some points of consideration. We've talked about the demographic and property characteristics, trying to plan for the future. They may not be changing tomorrow, but they will change one day, so I think that's something that's important. We talked about the philosophical viewpoint of this, and I understand the board is looking at trying to balance tax rates with redistribution of revenue between districts. But ultimately, these are some of the priorities that the board has stated before. We talked about fairness, long-term sustainability, not having to go revisit this conversation constantly throughout the years as we've had to do, that we can identify a methodology that works for the county long-term. So here are the two options, self-funding tax district and self-funding plus a county subsidy, that has received the most support from the stakeholders that we've worked with. Tax rates for self-funding, again, you can refer back to these as we have more conversation. There's a self-funding plus a 20% subsidy and the associated tax rates. And we wanted to provide the board one more slide before we go into our recommendation. We've talked a lot about that, about this, since we started this conversation, this project was about the impact in agricultural land of the county. So we wanted to provide two examples, one in New Salem, one in Stack Road, of a property and how that deferment program works for those values. I'm sure the board is more than aware, but we wanted to provide some examples. So for the New Salem example, total appraised value being $2.48 million. After deferment, that taxable value goes down to $234. Currently, in that district, they pay $30 in fire fee. With the change, as an example, to the 80-20 model, they paid $166. And as you can see for the parcel B example, similar breakdown, you get a total appraised value of $15 million. After deferment, that goes down to $2 million. The current fee payment $17 million. At 80-20, it's a little less than $2,000 that the fire tax would come to. Just to provide some examples to the board of what that looks like on the ground in the county. So move to the staff recommendation. We've had a lot of conversation in the community with our municipalities, our fire chiefs, and given a lot of the feedback that we have, we believe that the board could move forward with a 80-20 model or a local district tax plus a county subsidy model that they're supporting the community to do that. Seeing what the tax rates would be for a self-funding tax district in some of our more rural districts is fairly significant in those areas. And having a percentage county subsidy as part of this calculation does provide some relief to them, along with the same vein of the mutual aid and the collaboration that they all have with each other. So I believe the board can feel comfortable in instituting that type of methodology across the county. And just some general next steps, if we go that route, we could go ahead and update our taxable value numbers since we are looking at FY19 numbers. I don't think they'll change a whole lot, but we can provide those updated numbers as we move forward. We can go ahead and start having discussions with our municipalities who would have to approve by resolution to allow the county to assess fire tax within their municipalities. Obviously, Marshall, Wingate, Indian Trail, Fairview, Unionville being those towns who would need to take action. There's also significant statutory requirements for public hearings to create fire tax districts. There has to be mailed notices to affected property owners as well. So fairly extensive process that has to be done to make that transition from a fee to a fire tax district. And lastly, as part of the next step in this process, develop a formal policy on how we fund capital requests for our volunteer fire departments. So that's basically a lot of the feedback we've got across the community. So any feedback from the board would be appreciated. Yes, sir.
Question.
Yes, sir.
Like you talk about this process being lengthy, do we need to have it completed by July 1st so we can put it in our, if we utilize it in our 2019 budget?
2019 budget or 2020 budget?
2020 budget, excuse me.
Yeah, it have to move.
So we need to have specific goals to accomplish this. And the other thing I want to note that, I noticed that you've come back with some of the 80-20, the 80% has dropped in the tax rate from the last time we saw that. And I think you said that was because of some of the sales tax.
Yes, sir.
funding. Is that correct?
Well, the last presentation should have had that.
Yeah.
That was with the change
Dropped.
happened.
Considerably.
Michael, I thought I had heard it was almost too late to get it in on the 20.
Well, I said, but we'd have to evaluate the timeline to do that. It will be extremely tight for sure. We've been anticipating since, I think several months ago, we decided we were just going to kind of play this out until the FY 2021 to prepare for that, because it is a tight time frame. Yeah, I'm saying it could be done, but it would be extremely tight to do, in my opinion.
Probably decide what we're going to do.
Michael, your slide on the agricultural land you had there,
Yes, sir.
All hands on deck.
That's based on the-
About July 1.
current
That's what I'm
total fire budget for the county.
This is just saying, okay, well, yeah, it is based on that. That tax rate would be
Right,
based on
that's-
FY 19.
Prior to any adjustments for capital funding or anything like that.
Yes, sir.
Correct?
Yes, sir. That's just, like we were showing before,
So
this
that-
methodology existed today.
That includes the 19 budget, which is staff, operating, capital costs.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Michelle and Brian, we talked about this timetable to accomplish an 80-20 and what would be reasonable, and we had some lengthy conversation about that. And as I recall, it would be all hands on deck, almost an impossibility to make that happen before July 1 of this year. But if we started now, seeking resolutions, having the appropriate public notices, doing everything we needed to do by December, if we had all that wrapped up by December, that would be a reasonable time frame, and then that connects with going into the January budget development for the next fiscal year. Is that what I believe the consensus was in our conversations? Okay. Just so the board has that information where we talk about what is it going to take to get something like this done. It's a lot of notices that have to go out, a lot of meetings that have to be had.
So what happens if one town says, like Fairview, said they want to stick with the fire fee? Is that right?
That's the fire chiefs.
Countywide fire tax. They want to stick with the fire fee. Nobody?
No one wanted to stick with fire fee, no, sir.
Okay. So like, if there's disagreements in all the towns, and we pick one that's not in agreement, does it screw up the whole thing? The only thing that we can say, the only thing we can do definitely without the town approval is a countywide fire tax, correct?
Yes, sir. Well, let me say, like, everyone was in agreement that they wanted to go to a taxing model. I think that's the first thing that we learned fairly quickly.
Right.
Because all municipalities want to do that. And even the ones who, I can't remember exactly how many it was, but even the ones who say we prefer a self-funding tax district, they understood that 80-20 would work. I didn't hear any hard feelings about doing 80-20. And vice versa is true. Somebody who chose 80-20 first also said they could, self-funding district, they understood the validity of that as well. So I don't think there was anybody hard opposed if you chose one than the one they chose.
Can you charge a tax in the municipal district? Like, if Unionville wants to go to a fire tax model, could you charge a tax in Unionville or Waxhaw or Mineral Springs and leave the rural areas out, the unincorporated areas of the county out of it, and leave them on a fire fee?
And just do the town.
You talk about like if part of Unionville service area is outside of the city limits of Unionville.
Right.
Well, if you look on the maps that's provided, so there's, the county is divided into, by these red lines, those are all fire districts. Okay, and that's established by the Department of Insurance.
Right, I guess what I'm getting at is that the town councils are elected by the town citizens, and the town citizens are most likely not farming 2,000 acres of land inside the town. Maybe happening, but most likely not in most towns. So, what you have is a situation like New York. That's why we have 2 senators from each state, to prevent a overrepresentation in the populated areas, which might be a house and 1 acre of land and 2 cars, versus people that are farming, 1,000 acres, 2,000, 10,000, and having poultry houses, equipment that that can be taxed at a different rate than somebody with a house and a 1/4 acre, 1/2 acre of land.
But isn't that what this board, as representing the county, we make that decision? Municipalities take care of their internal?
So in the where there's a municipality like Wingate, and Wingate has to approve that resolution for a fire tax, okay? Well, there's a whole lot of unincorporated area in that. This board is the representative of the unincorporated piece. In places like Lanes Creek and Allen's Crossroads and Stack and Sandy Ridge and Jackson, where there's not a municipality, this board is the one who has the taxing authority down here in these unincorporated areas. So if the municipality, Unionville, votes a resolution to support a fire tax in the incorporated areas of Unionville, well, the Board of County Commissioners represents the unincorporated areas in that fire district. So by moving down this path and asking these municipalities to adopt this resolution on the fire tax, you are in fact saying that the Board of County Commissioners, we support a fire tax in this district. We're asking this municipality to support it within their incorporated limits.
Right, and I guess what I'm saying again is that, what I see the pushback, while the municipalities, through their elected leaders in those municipalities, may be okay with their house and 1 acre, or 1/2 acre, or 1/4 acre of lot being taxed, I don't know that we're going to see the same response from the farmers in the unincorporated areas. And again, it goes back to that same equity problem, is that, are you putting a greater burden on those, farms, the poultry houses and the combines, and I know we all have to pay, but.
They are already getting a 72% tax discount.
Right. But so that farm, I guess that's what got me there, Stack Road Fire Fee District. So they're going to more than double what they pay for fire.
Compared to what they currently pay in the fee model, yes. Because it's an actual tax, but again, we wanted to, and the farm department is a great program, no one's saying it's not, but it's, you see what that department is and the value, but it's taxable, it's a pretty.
Now, does that include buildings and equipment, or just?
It should be everything that falls within the tax.
That's total taxable value.
I think the only thing that doesn't is the machinery and equipment, that didn't fall within that.
Michael, on that, excuse me, on that New Salem example up there,
Yes, sir.
got them paying $30.
Mhm.
Does that include the 1.48 or the 1.48?
One zero to the countywide tax?
Yeah,
No, we're just talking about just the district itself.
but that
That's a
individual,
fee. That's a fee.
that individual will be paying that as well, correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. They will be.
And
They might have bill
that would go away under the 80/20?
The fee
The
would
beat
go away.
wouldn't necessarily go, it'd be combined as a part of
Yes.
total tax.
It'd be a district tax and a countywide tax, or within the general fund budget.
The fee goes away.
I understand that. My point being, that individual right now, under the fire fee, where he's paying $30, is also paying some additional money
Yes, sir.
on the 1.1 cent.
That's a good point.
Now, my understanding, that was staying and kind of a source for the 20%. So the 1.03 is basically in place, but then that's where we get the, we're not going to call it a fire fee.
Yeah.
That's the subsidized 20% part of this 80/20.
Yes, sir. Currently, we pay 20% from that countywide tax for fire services.
And I think when you look at, let me ask you this, is the appraised value in Stack Road, for example, is that all appraised land, homes and everything? Or is that just farmland?
That's that one parcel. That's one parcel example.
Oh, okay.
I picked one, everything that's on that is just what's included in that.
Okay, that's one, those are one parcel examples.
Right,
Okay,
yes,
one parcel
thank you.
examples.
Keep on that number for a second. So the homes there, that's just the land. A home would be paying $100 fire fee? What would be the?
Yes, sir.
I guess I'm trying to see,
If it's undeveloped land, it's like,
it looks like the big landowners are just shifting a lot of burden to the big landowners.
Well, what about the, there's a lot of small homes, mobile homes, things like that out there. Now, they've been carrying the burden over years past, where now their $100 may shrink. And, you know, so it's kind of scheduled on, you know, just like the fire districts now, we pay a tax on the value of our property. And this is the same thing.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I guess my biggest concern, if we're going to move forward with this, is we've made a diligent effort over the past 6 months to 2 years of visiting with and educating the fire chiefs, talking with the fire chiefs, and visiting with the municipalities and their boards and talking with the boards. When the agricultural community finds out about this change, it's going to be when they get their tax bill and see it. That's the first time they're going to know. No offense, but people are busy and probably not following our live feed currently, wanting to know about this. So my point is, if we're going to go down this road, I think we probably need some kind of heads up, some kind of informational sheet, something to inform those present use value property owners of changes being considered.
Could that be done through the ag community and 4-H? I mean, where do we go to?
Well, it can be, the tax office as well.
Maybe a mailer, just kind of give an example of what those examples are. Because they'll kind of know their taxable value. They'll probably know some of that, but if it's going to go up 5 times, I mean, that's
sticker shock.
yes, yeah, good.
I would suggest the tax office send some sort of notice to those that are under the.
That's good.
We got a deferment list, right? We got a list of all the people on deferment.
that's where we pulled some of those numbers from.
Yeah, if
I
you
mean,
would,
it would need to be a hard communications outreach, but we were just trying to narrow it down.
Right.
Now we can actually tell them what the board is, is looking at. Before we had a menu of options, and it's hard to communicate that to the community.
I would say that's probably what we need to do, is send some kind of notice to the ones that are on taxable value. That should be an easy list to get. Show them the difference, what we're talking about, what they're paying. And then along with, the water stuff that we talked about the other day, maybe that helps and justifies some of it, maybe lower some taxes on other things that they have, I don't know. But it would be, you don't want to send it out as a bill without showing them something. And again, because the municipalities may or may not approve it, you do have a diverse group of people that you're dealing with. People, you got 10,000 people with half-acre lots, and then maybe 1,000 people with, 100-acre lots, 100-acre fields.
Michael,
So,
the way it functions in the fire district I'm in, I also have a fire tax on my automobiles. So if we're gonna notify people, we probably need to just send it to all the taxpayers, because that's gonna be a change for them as well.
that's a good idea.
You're making the money, unless you're raising the money that they're getting, when you're raising the money 5 times or 10 or more on vacant land, that means that somebody's getting a break. If you're using the same dollars, who's getting the break?
That somebody's getting a break.
If you're leaning on the landowners that have vacant land that aren't turned into subdivisions yet, who gets the break? Is it the mobile homeowners? Is it the?
Well, I think we're approaching a system that is, I guess, is more common. It's a similar or a regular taxing model, and everything will be taxed the same as most everything else is taxed. So if anybody's getting a break, I mean, if somebody who has a low value property, and they're paying $100, and under the new taxing model they'll pay $30, because they're what they own is the value of that is used as part of the calculation. It's not just a flat fee. I mean, that's one of the changes to it.
Now, I think
But
98 of the 100 counties in North Carolina use the taxable model.
Well, if you were using a taxable countywide to distribute it evenly, it'd be different. And is this like this 80-20 tax? Is that where you're getting 20 cents in one district and 3 cents in another district?
we're getting 20%, every fire service tax district, 80% of what they need contractually for the fire departments to do what they do in the district. 80% of that has to come from a local district tax.
Right.
20% of that need comes from the general fund coffers from the county as a whole. So like we had, that's for 80% of the budget requirements that they need. That's what the tax rate would be at the local district level.
Michael,
Yes, sir.
what I want to say to the other commissioners is what I have seen in the talking to the fire chiefs is, well, first, we're a year away from having it ready, because everything I hear of what we need to do, what we want to do, what we should do, is stuff that I can't make a decision on by myself, and I may come back and present it to the other 4 people here, and they quickly point out that doesn't make a lot of sense. But from what I have seen, my feeling is individual tax districts all over the county. Layton's Creek may not want the level of, I mean, I'm not trying to keep the county split, but Layton's Creek may not want the level of fire protection that Wesley Chapel has.
Could take back to the slide.
But Dennis, it's off their budget. So if their fire funded need is not as great, and you're not servicing as many people, your budget's not gonna be quite as high. And you can see that in the appropriate budgets.
Well, I understand that. I guess, me and you worked a lot on it with the old fire commission. And the more I look at it, the more confused I get about it. I remember Jerry said about a year and a half ago, and I'm not throwing you under the bus, it was very wise words. You said, this is something we're gonna have to deal with sooner or later. And I thought, at that time, but it has gotta be dealt with, sooner probably than later. And then the last time we met with Johnny Blight, he said something that stuck in my mind. He said, we have to be funded not for what we do, but for what we might have to do. And when you think about that, I'm talking back and forth really, Richard. When I say we gotta fund them to what they might have to do, that's a pretty high funded model. But I almost feel like we need to get the majority of the feelings in these rural districts and just see what they want.
Just like Wingate having to pay 10 cents more. But a lot of that's because the university is not taxed, right? Right. So there's a lot of taxable value there that's untapped. So you're gonna lean on the farmers in that district and the homeowners in that district.
Michael, isn't Wingate the second richest district in the county behind Baker's? As far as
richest? No.
Now, does that include internal, that calculation for Wingate include internal Wingate?
Inside?
Yep.
Yes, sir.
Because right now, they don't pay a fire fee.
Yeah, right now, they don't pay a fire fee at all. So this includes that the town would allow us to collect fire tax.
What all is not taxed? Like any property that Wingate University owns throughout the county would not be taxed. Property that SPCC owns.
Well, not any property that they own. I think it's just the properties, the buildings that are the educational
like
buildings.
example,
and things like
Stonebridge
that,
Golf
they have-
Course.
it's taxed, we've been told.
Yeah, if
It
they
is
own-
taxed.
Staff, that is under Wingate.
We
Golf
think
course.
it is, it's just changed hands, but what Mark's saying, and not jump in front of you, but if it's for educational, it's tax-free, but if it's run,
Like
if it's
investment, business investment.
as an investment, then they pay. So,
But if churches aren't taxed either, my understanding.
And utilities are, there is a specific tax schedule on utilities, which is much less than the normal rate. The other thing, Commissioner Rake, to add on to what you were saying just a minute ago, is one thing that in my talking with the volunteer fire departments and their chiefs, and that they all have pointed out and believe in strongly, is they are a community-based organization. And every one of those fire departments represents the community that they serve. And when you talk about the level of service that's needed in those various communities across the county, Griffith Road may not need the same kind of fire apparatus that a Wesley Chapel needs. So it's a different kind of apparatus. The level of training may be a little different. What Henry Bridge and Stallings and Bakers are facing up in Indian Trail with mid-rise development is going to require a different type of apparatus, a different type of personal equipment, different type of training, and different and potentially more firehouse locations in order to serve that. So, in the future. But every one of those is based on what the community needs in that particular area of the county. I'm gonna put you on the spot back there. Is that what y'all, is that fair to say, Johnny and Stephen? Did I accurately,
Yes, sir.
describe that?
I think your comments are accurate, yes, sir.
You know, again, I think about, this is so difficult because the easy thing to do would be to go with what would benefit the majority of the people in the county. The majority of the people would benefit from where they live, and everything else would benefit from maybe this. But you gotta protect the majority of the people too, just because they're not as many of them. You can't just, I mean, you know, if anybody's taxes went up 5-6 times, again, without telling them or without at least having that discussion with them, I think.
Well, this is the same conceptual model that the fire study did, that and a couple commissioners ran, Simpson and everything. The only difference is it's using 20% instead of a fixed amount. It still was an 80 basic
It's the same
concept,
theory.
an 80-20. And
Well, the difficulty, and Union County is a little bit unique. The difficulty is what Michael said with regard to the fact that most taxing systems are attempt to be based on fairness and based on you tax the value of the property. The whole fire fee system was born out of, if you have a $100,000 home and $1 million home, then you think, well, in fairness, you need more fire protection on the $1 million home than the $100,000 home. For the half-acre land with a single-wide mobile home, may want a little more fire protection than 2 acres of open land that has no building, nothing of any property value besides the dirt that's there. And that's difficult to figure out a way to do it. We've been beating it around and kicking it around forever and ever.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure counties across the state deal with this who have a heavy agricultural presence. It just is what it is. And I mean, to me, that I don't know a whole lot about or and well versed in that deferment program, but the point behind the program is that we do take away some of the value and lessen the impact on these farmers who, and it's a good program to have, but you know, across North Carolina, there's fire taxes on agricultural land. I mean, it's not unique to us. It's
And I guess my point I was making was we're unique in that we probably have more large acreage farms than a lot of other counties do.
yes, sir.
So the difference or the amount to pay would be accentuated because of that.
Yes, sir.
And we have one that wanted to go with the status quo. Who was that?
Indian Trail.
So they just kind of satisfied with
they
it.
pay a fire tax now, except
Well,
for Baker's portion.
Yeah, so the situation in Indian Trail is you got 3 departments serving the incorporated Indian Trail. You have Henry Bridge, it's fire tax. You have Stallings, it's fire tax. And you have Baker's, that's fire fee. And again, the situation that's developing with mid-rise height development, density in development, things like that, that there are discussions about what does the future look like for fire protection inside the incorporated Indian Trail. And because they don't have a sense of where they want to go with that or how it should be done, they selected the status quo option at this time.
Can I ask a question? Johnny, are they anywhere close to a decision on what they're gonna do, or? Still working on it. The answer I'm gonna give is we're still working on it.
I mean, is it a political dilemma or just a complex dilemma?
It's both, but both are complex.
Yeah.
So.
So you're gonna make a motion that they send out a notice to?
Well, I was just gonna ask a question, if I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but how long would a communication effort like that take?
I would say
A letter to
Three.
the link?
3 months or so, but, you know, we've got time right now. If the.
Take us
if-
3 months,
you mean
take us 3 months to put a letter together and get, and mail it
Well,
to
by the time you
PUV
get all
people?
that and you get feedback, 90 days at least, by the time you put all that together.
We'll get
You get it.
feedback about the day after.
About 30 minutes after they get that letter, you're gonna get feedback.
I say 90 days,
And this may be not worth anything.
I think a fair, like an appropriate communication plan to say 90 days. I mean, you're gonna get anecdotal feedback, absolutely, you get that every day, right? I think what you would want is a communication plan that maybe probably Commissioner Simpson, more than just a letter would be my recommendation. There are probably things we could put on our website. We could, I think what we would do is a full-blown communication effort to
How many
make sure
landowners do you think
that
they got in that boat?
how many what, landowners?
How many farm to firm landowners, individuals?
The list I was looking at it was probably 8 of the largest landowners in the county.
that's the number on the department.
I don't know.
Oh, sorry.
I don't
We have
know.
106, 109,000 parcels, so I think it's.
Oh,
rather-
Sold
that's
out the
total.
other day.
So that's a rather large number. It's probably going to be, I'd say half of that at least, if I had to guess, or close to
Just
that.
individuals.
You put them all together at the Ag Center.
And I guess I would ask first, if you're gonna direct that, which I would want you to direct a communications plan. I heard Chairman Helms say that he would want us to communicate broadly to the entire county, so that's different than just
Well,
communicating.
fee districts.
So that's, I mean, that's,
That's
you know,
pretty-
that
there's
becomes
a lot.
pretty comprehensive, which I think that's a good idea for us to do that, but it will take us some time to do that effectively, which is what we would wanna do. We're not just gonna do it for window dressing, we're gonna do a full plan.
Well, I think there's a lot of revenue that would help the fire departments that can be achieved by straightening it up, where we have fire fees that are not really reflective of what the people get. I think we've got some $1 million homes in Longview that pay $100 because they're in the old Providence Fire Department.
Well, supposedly, Weddington tells me they've corrected that.
Okay, but what I'm saying is, and the same thing in Lanes Creek, there's a lot of $500,000 homes down there that pay $100. And I think that would tremendously help the fire departments without doing a land grab, and you know what I'm saying?
And if y'all will recall, when we're talking about this too, it's not just the homeowners, it's the commercial properties, that the fee is hardly anything on commercial properties. So they're gonna see a more similar tax rate or payment as our current tax districts do. Their commercial property owners are paying, you know, what they would in most communities. So,
I think it needs, that we may come up with a better plan, but I think to move the people that pay a flat fee on their house, on their main residence, I think that's just too old. Was there one, who was paying $30 a house? You say?
No, that wasn't a house, that was.
That's a parcel, one parcel of land.
Yeah.
It's in the farm deferment program.
$2.5 million is a significant piece of land.
Right.
The taxable value is $234, their current fire fee is $30.
Okay.
And it would, on that 20% tax combo, it would be $166.63.
Well, what I'm talking about is not the bulk land, but going after the houses first, the ones that are paying very little. I mean, $100 fire fee on $500,000 house is,
Well, you know, you got individuals in the county. Now, I'm in the Mineral Springs district, and there are large landowners in that district that are paying the fire fee. The straight fire fee, just like we're proposing.
They pay the fire tax.
That's what I mean, it's fire tax, excuse me. But they're paying that fire tax. So you got part of the large landowners paying fire tax, and there are those that are paying the fire fee and are being subsidized by that 40-year-old mobile home.
Yeah, but they got a lot of infrastructure around them that's gonna never be able to do. So they've got the ability to sell those tracks too for a lot of money, where you'll never have that. And the other, you know, when I look at a big industrial property inside of a municipality on a fire fee, that may be paying $200 for a fire fee, when it may be a $6,000 facility, you have to pay on a fire tax. That's why I was asking, is there some way of, you know, capturing it within the municipalities and then leaving the fire fee? But
You'd have to redraw that, you'd have to redraw the fire districts and do something like that.
Yeah, it's complicated, right?
Then I think the county's just taken another huge step of responsibility in municipalities.
And the various, you know, if it's all within 3 cents of each other, but when you start getting into 5 and 10 cents.
Or what, 10 cent was the highest there?
11 was the highest.
10.
10?
Well, almost 11. 11.
Sure.
Yes, sir.
I've said this several times, that this is not due to lack of information or lack of study, but it's all about political will. And the people that are going to make the decision about the forward direction of fire funding is going to be 5 people sitting here right now, unless we put it off another 2 or 3 years. But Michelle made a very good point. It's my opinion that we're at a point, we're at a crossroads here. We have the information. We're trying to make an intelligent decision, and I think it would be wrong if we didn't attempt to fully educate the people that it's going to impact through an adequate, if it takes 90 days, communication effort. So I would move that we do that, Mr. Chairman.
Make the communication.
I'd like to add a little more to that. I agree with everything you said. I think we have a recommendation from staff. In my opinion, and you go up and disagree, is we need to take staff's direction and in conjunction with doing a notification to these individuals. And I think the key there is number 3, begin the planning for public hearings so that we can start to hear back from the community. But I think if we don't do anything today, then all we're doing is kicking that can down the road yet again. I think, to Jerry's point, we have studied and studied and studied, and
For about 6 years.
yeah, way too long. And I think we're at a juncture where we need to take the next step, and I think the next step is to follow staff's direction and start down the process. That doesn't mean in the end that we're going to end up doing what we started out doing, but we're going to have to do something, or we're going to be in the same place we are today 3 years from now.
And just another question on that. With what staff's recommending, there's no municipality that can nix that.
I guess it depends on what you mean by mix.
Like there's no one municipality that we go through all this
A town can always
scaring the heck out of people, and then all of a sudden the town says, never mind.
Well, when we spent probably 3 months again going to all these towns, And the interaction conversation was always positive. They want to see something done. I do not foresee any of these municipalities saying,
So-
I don't want to be involved in the system.
So
They're gonna do it themselves.
Unionville, with the size farms that they have, is not gonna come up and say, well, we had a meeting with our farmers and they decided they don't wanna be a part of this plan, and it messes up the plan for the whole
Well,
thing.
I think that could always happen, but I think at some point, we've got to do something to start getting that feedback, because otherwise, we're not gonna accomplish
I
anything.
got you, I got you.
And Stoney, to your point, and to Frank's too, maybe we can bring some of the fire districts into a taxing district, and we leave some like they.
That's not the motion, the recommendation from staff, unless we want to go out and recreate another model. I was taking yours as a motion.
Yeah, mine was a motion.
To accept it, the staff's recommendation for an 80-20 model, and immediately begin communication with all impacted citizens. Is that fair, Jerry?
Fair enough.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Anyone want to discuss that motion any further?
Implementation date, July 1st of 2020.
Yes, effective date is with a December time frame to have our process identified and finalized. Okay, is there any? We've got a motion? No discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Michael, the only thing I've heard negative about this thing is there are some chiefs upset you're leaving. You've done a good job of communicating and presenting the options to our departments, and I got that feedback
More than the chief
yesterday.
is upset easily.
Oh, I know.
I appreciate
But he
that.
won friends in the fire department pretty quickly.
When you gonna be going?
April 1st is my start date.
So we
April
can
1st.
we can lay the blame on you,
15th.
right? Lay all the blame on you that you come up with.
Oh, did he? We'll hold you to 15.
You don't wanna go to work on April.
Anything else?
especially.
I don't, do you have anything else we need to address? All right, I move to adjourn the special meeting. All in favor?
That's completely brain dead right there. I mean, like, I'm like, I have no idea what his name is right now.
Yeah.